Okay, so this week we're going to be learning how to create flourishes and patterns. So flourishes are just these little fancy little things, and they were used in calligraphy, and designers use them for all kinds of things with text, for frames, in patterns, and really anything you want. The possibilities are endless. And then patterns can be used in a lot of different ways, again, in design. And there's also, applications for it for print and for products like wallpaper. And I think wallpaper has made a big comeback, especially now that they're selling wallpaper that's removable. So also textile design uses patterns, and that's a really cool industry. So you can make, these are all vector patterns for textile design. So there's just a ton of stuff you can do with patterns and flourishes. And if you like creating this, I always like to point students to places they can actually sell their work. So this is Creative Market, and anyone can upload images of artwork. There's all kinds of sections here, but in the graphics section, there's a whole subsection of patterns. And so people can upload these images. This designer created this, whoever this person is, created these vector designs and uploaded them and then shows them on different products. So people can purchase the license and print these patterns on to different products. So other designers will buy this designer's patterns. So you can upload your artwork into a site like Creative Market and get paid every time someone purchases your designs. There's all kinds of sections here, and if you're interested in starting to sell your work, especially while you're in school, it's a good way to make some extra money if you're making really high quality stuff. And then Society 6 is another place that I recommend that's super easy. Both of these websites, you're just uploading high quality, high resolution designs, and they're doing all of the marketing. They're dealing with the customers. You don't have to ship or do anything like that. You literally just have to upload your images. If you want to do more marketing for yourself, you can, but Society 6 has a whole wallpaper section. See, it's new. And you can see how all these cool repeated patterns are made here. A lot of really awesome, fun designs. And I think it's good to look at this and look at it, sort it by the most popular ones so you can see what people are purchasing and buying. So the designers that put these up, different artists put these up, and they get paid a percentage of the profit. And again, you don't have to deal with customers or ship or anything. It's sort of like a passive income thing. You're just uploading the image and then you're done with it. All right, so let's get started. We are in Illustrator. We're gonna go to File, New, and you can just make a letter size. I like to work with multiple artboards, but you don't have to do that. You can just work with one. Okay, so to make a flourish, we are going to use the pen tool, which is the most common tool in Illustrator. For the size of your artboard, the reason I'm not being too specific about it is because remember this is a vector object, so you can blow it up super big like the size of a billboard, or you can make it really small. So you can always take these shapes that you make. We're gonna make a flourish right now. You can always take it and copy and paste it and blow it up later. So it doesn't really matter what size your actual artboard is. Okay, so we're in the pen tool, and that's just P on the keyboard. And this is kind of the most common tool in Illustrator. Basically what you do, and you can use your mouse or a tablet, is you just click or tap and then click and drag it out. So every time you click, it makes what's called an anchor point. If you click and drag, it makes these handle things. And then to close the shape, you go back to the beginning. Now, if you want to adjust it, there's this selection tool is V on the keyboard, and that moves the entire shape. And you can adjust it like this. And then A is this white arrow, that's the direct selection tool, and that moves these anchor points. So I click on one of the points and I can move that. I can also move the handle like this. And if I want to add handles to one of them, I can come back into the pen tool and right click to get this anchor point tool. if I forgot to add handles to it and just drag it out. And then you can add anchor points. Under here, I'm in the pen tool and I'm right clicking. There's add anchor point tool. You can always add more. And then I'm gonna press A and I'm moving that. Or I can come back into the P tool. And actually when I just press P and I click on the path, it asks me if I want to add it. See how the cursor kind of changes to a plus sign? So you can always add anchor points that way. And if you made way too many anchor points, you can come into the pen tool again, right click and delete anchor points. So you can get rid of them too. So you just have to click right on it to get rid of it. And that will change the shape. If you want to connect two anchor points, I'm going to come back into just the pen tool. And let's say I start drawing a shape and it's not connected. I'm going to press V to get out of it. And so it's not connected. I want to connect it. I'm going back into the pen tool and I can just click on one and click on the other. And now it's connected as one shape. To get out of the pen tool, sometimes when people are beginning with the pen tool, they like get stuck in it and you're like going over here and it's driving you crazy. You can just press V, the selection tool, to get out of it, or A. So you can always go into another tool to get out of the tool you're using. We're gonna make just a wavy shape and then we're going to change the width of it, the stroke of it. So I'm just making like a wavy line. And I'm pressing V to get out of the pen tool. And then I'm coming up to, I'm clicking on it. So I'm in V, the selection tool. I'm clicked on it here. And now I can see my stroke on the top and I can see these options, the variable width option. If you do not have this toolbar on the top, do not worry. Just come into Window, and I think if you go into the workspace painting, that will give you all these options that I have open. So if you don't see these options here, just get to it in Window. So you can always come into the stroke. I'm clicked on it. I'm pressing the up arrow to increase the stroke size. And then we can change what it looks like. So you can see there's uniform, where the stroke is all the same width. I'm gonna make it a little bigger. And then if we pick the first one, this makes it look like more like a calligraphy pen. And you can try them all out. Just see how they look, see what you like. So you can really add a lot to just a plain line. You can also change the brush like we did in the last project by just coming into your brush window. If you don't have this open, again, go to Windows, make sure brushes is checked. And if you're selected on the line, you can change it into whatever brush you want. But to make flourishes, we want to use just a solid line. Okay, so for the flourish, we're just basically combining multiple elements. Okay, so the arc tool, if you don't see it, the line tool is the one on the top. So it's like under the text, and come to the arc tool here. And all you do is click and drag out the arc. I am going to select it with the direct selection tool. You could just press V. So I'm increasing the stroke by clicking in there and pressing the up arrow. And then I'm changing the width, the variable width profile here. And you can make yours however you want. I am going to make a copy. So I'm in the direct selection, that's V on the keyboard, and I'm holding the Alt key, and you can see my cursor changes, and I'm just dragging out a copy. And then if I come to the corner here, my cursor will change so that I can rotate it, and I can just rotate it a little. And you can see, you can start to make copies and kind of feather it out. And then what you want to do is come into your zoom and come back into the selection tool and move these around so they're all lined up, and you can use your arrow tools to get them to look really good. And if you couldn't get them all lined up into a point that you like, you can really zoom in. And I'm holding the space bar to get this little hand tool, and you can really, really get close. So zooming in is your friend. Zooming in is gonna help you get stuff really detailed, and you want to make clean work. Like this right here is not clean looking, right? That's not gonna look great. And especially if you're making something like a flourish where you might use over and over again, or if you were going to sell it on one of those websites, you really want it to be clean. So you can click on this, and then you can come into your direct selection tool, the A on the keyboard, and you could select just that anchor point. So I'm not selected on the whole thing, I'm just moving this anchor point to get it in there. And now if I do Control 0, you know, you can keep on adjusting stuff, zooming in and out and checking your work. Okay, so we're gonna make a little like spirally flourish here with the spiral tool. So under the arc is the spiral tool. And you can see we can drag that out. And if you hold Control, that's gonna affect how tight or loose your spiral is. So that's really up to you. I'm gonna do Control Z. So I'm clicking and dragging it out, and then I'm holding Control and changing the tightness of my spiral. So then I'm selecting it with V, the selection tool, and I'm gonna turn it around. I'm gonna make it bigger, and I'm gonna kind of have it coming out of this. And then you can, of course, increase the stroke up here. So I'm just clicking in this box, pressing the up arrow, and then I can change this, make it look a little better, and then I can come zoom in, Control plus, hold the hand space bar to get the hand tool to really get in there, Control plus, and this is something you definitely want to clean up here. So I could move the whole thing around, but then it's going to stick out the side, and that doesn't look great. So I'm going to go in to press A into my direct selection. I'm clicking on this anchor point, and I'm moving it, and I'm making sure I'm just selected on the anchor point, and I'm moving it so it's kind of hidden behind here. And then I might have to adjust this handle a little bit to make sure it's not messed up. And that looks a little better. And you'll spend some time to get this angle looking right. You can also delete some of the anchor points. So you could always come into the pen tool and the delete anchor point tool, and you could delete this. And then you could come back into the direct selection, and you can move this here. You know, you can play around with that. So there's lots. That doesn't look so great though. So I'm gonna go back. So I'm gonna add like a little bulb at the end of this with the width tool. So I'm gonna zoom in even more so I can see the very end. And I think you see this a lot in designs. They'll, like, it doesn't just end like this, it'll be a nice like bulbous ending. So I'm clicked on this, V, clicked on this, and I'm going into a new tool that we haven't tried yet, and it is the width tool. So I think it looks kind of like a jester hat. So I'm clicking on this anchor point and dragging it out. And then I can click here and narrow it in. So I can drag it out or in, and I can click back on it and adjust it any way I want. Also, if you make too many, okay, so I made this one that I don't like, so I'm clicking on this line that was created for the width tool, and I'm just pressing delete, so that goes away. But I do want this to be a little more. So you can make as many of these width options as you want. And then I can come into A on the keyboard, the direct selection arrow, and you can play around with this and change the look of it. I'm gonna come back into my width tool. I think I wanna delete this guy. Sometimes you have to make it bigger to see it and then delete it. So you can obviously spend hours making yours look really great. Then I'm gonna press A again to get back into my anchor point tool. And you can spend a lot of time making this look the way you want it to. You can come into the width tool and I can adjust this. Maybe this needs to move more that way. And you can make it bigger. Okay, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but you can spend more time perfecting yours. The one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to like break it. So you can see right here how this is happening. It's getting kind of broken, and that you definitely don't want. So just make sure you keep it clean and you keep it from breaking. So that might mean going back into your width tool and deleting some of these lines, you know, clicking on one of them and deleting, and making sure it looks super clean. And it also means coming into your direct selection, A on the keyboard, and moving stuff around so it's not broken. So just make sure to keep your work clean and get it looking great, and spend obviously more time on it than I will now. Oh, one thing to remember to do is I'm selected on it. I'm in the appearance panel like we used last time. So if you don't see that again, Windows appearance, and in the stroke, see the cap options? You want the cap to be round. That's gonna help a lot. Though it didn't make much of a difference for mine, but sometimes it does. Okay, so then you can add more details to your flourishes. So you can add a lot of details on here, and you can add really whatever you want. So you can come in with the pen tool, which is just P on the keyboard, and you can make a shape. You can make any kind of shape you want coming out of here. You know, if it's not going to be exactly a spiral, it can be something else. Yours is going to look a lot better than mine. And then what you want to do is you want to reverse these because you want it to be filled and not a stroke. Now what you can't do when you do this is you can't combine them in the Pathfinder, because one is a fill and one is a stroke, and Illustrator will not like that. So what you want to do is not use the Pathfinder for this. That will not give you good results. So you can always zoom out. That doesn't look great, but for our purposes, I think you can get the idea. You can add a lot of extra detail to your flourish. So you can make yours look really great, add a lot of extra details. So what we're gonna do is make it into a pattern swatch that you can use again and again. So I'm in the selection tool, which is V. I'm selecting everything. This is why we don't have to use the Pathfinder to combine it. We can just select everything, take it and drag it into the swatches window. So swatches is right here. I'm gonna pull it out so you can see. So I'm just selecting this and dragging it in to my swatches, and it shows up in here. So let me get this out of the way. So now I can come in and I click on the swatch and it just shows up again. I can just drag it in, which is kind of awesome. You can drag it in as many times as you want. So that works really great. And these are all grouped together. So once you drag it in after you put it in the swatch, you don't have to worry about selecting them all because they're automatically grouped together. But you can double click on it and edit specific things when you're in this editing mode. So then you can come in and move this around because that actually looks horrible. So please make yours look better. Okay, so now that's making it into a pattern swatch. Now we're gonna make it into a brush. So I'm gonna make a different one. Let me get out of this. Let me select all this stuff and delete it. And I'm gonna get out of there. I'm gonna make a spiral. I'm gonna hold Control and I'm selecting it. And I have no fill and no stroke, which isn't great. So I'm gonna add a stroke and no fill, and I'm gonna increase the width. I'm gonna change the uniform size. And I'll increase this a little more so you can see it. So then I could add, I can play around with the width tool, I can add bulbs on it, I can add whatever I want, and we can make anything into a brush, any of these shapes into a brush. So I'm pulling out my brushes panel, just so you can see. Let me put the swatches back here. And if you don't see brushes, you can come to Window, Brushes, and I'm just taking it and dragging it into the brush panel. And this is gonna pop up. So we wanna make this into an art brush. We're gonna do scatter brushes in a little bit, and press OK. And now you have a lot of options here. So the direction is the direction it's gonna like paint stuff or draw stuff. So, you can switch that. This kind of thing is really about experimenting. So I really want you to try different things. If you have a tablet, or if you use a tablet, you can use the pressure option here to change how it will be affected with the tablet with pressure. And let's press OK. So now I'm gonna move this out of the way. And I can just draw with the pen tool. I can just draw a straight line. And then I can press V to select it. So it has to be selected. And then I can just click on that brush. And that spiral shape I made, you can see it's within the width of that line. You can also you can do like an arc. Let's see what that looks like. Sometimes that looks kind of funky. And then I'm pressing V, so it has to be selected, and then it's within that. So you can see it gets kind of distorted, but you can try with different shapes to make brushes that work for you and for what you want for your design. Also, if you make this, I'm pressing V, the original line that you have in here is always going to show up, and you can move that around. You can also press Alt and make multiple copies of it. So you can start making flourishes and designs this way. If you make a spiral shape that you really like, make it into a brush, and you can repeat it and alter it and make different flourishes that way. So try experimenting with that. Okay, so scatter brushes are really cool. If you don't see them, you come into brushes, this little options here, open brush library, and you go to decorative and click decorative scatter, and then they come out here. Get them. So what we need to do is we need to create some lines for the scatter brush to be like attached to. So I'm going to use the pencil tool, which is a tool we haven't used before. It's underneath the shaper tool, which you probably have on top. So the pencil tool. And if you're using a tablet, you can double click on the pencil tool. If you're not great at drawing, this is where the tablet really helps. If you turn the fidelity up, here, let me turn it down first so you can see. So if I'm trying to draw a straight line and it looks like that, with the fidelity down, it will still show all the bumps, but I double click on this, turning the fidelity all the way up. And then if I draw like a crappy shaky line, it's gonna smooth it out for me. So that's something that's really helpful about the tablet. You can also work with the pressure that it's creating. So I'm just making a bunch of lines. I'm going to go into V, my selection. I'm gonna select them all. And then I'm just gonna hit one of the scatters brushes. Or you can try bubbles. And we can make our own. So basically the scatter brushes have like bigger and smaller objects in them, and it's kind of random looking, and you can do like, think about like clouds or grass or stars or something like that, and you can make your own, so you can really make it whatever you want, and then you can take each of those lines that I was creating, you can take them and adjust them, so you can really do a lot with this. Okay, so we're gonna make our own scatter brush. Okay, so I'm gonna make a flower scatter brush. So we're gonna make a sort of daisy flower with the pen tool and rotating. So I'm just drawing a simple petal shape, closing off that shape. I'm going to fill it with orangey color. I'm going to have no stroke on it. So I want to rotate this around and make it look like a flower. So I'm in the rotate tool, which is here, and let me zoom in so you can see what's happening. So see this little, there's this little anchor point is what this is called. It's like a bullseye kind of thing. This is what the object, the shape will rotate around. So it's kind of rotating around the middle, which makes sense for most stuff, but for what we're doing, we want it to rotate around so it makes a sort of flower shape. So I need to line up, this is my cursor, I need to line it up with the anchor point, and I'm moving that anchor point, it's blue, it's kind of hard to see, but I'm moving that in the middle, and then it's gonna rotate, you can see it's gonna rotate around that anchor point. Where it gets a little tricky is if your cursor needs to change to an arrow. So sometimes this tool gets a little tricky because sometimes it thinks you're wanting to move this anchor point, and see how it turns back into the crosshairs. When it's in the crosshairs, it only moves the anchor point. But we want it to be, we want to move the anchor point, and then right after you move the anchor point, the cursor turns into an arrow, and that's when we want to press Alt so we can make a copy and move it. We can hold Alt and keep doing that, or an easier way is to right click, transform, because what we did was we made a transformation, and we can just transform again, but that's Control D on the keyboard, so you can just press Control D, keep pressing it. If you want to make yours perfect, it's a circle, right? It's 360 degrees. What you can do is when you make the first, see now I'm back, I don't want this to mess you guys up, so I'm gonna take a little time to show you because it can be a little frustrating. I'm back where the cursor is a crosshair, and then I press Alt and it moves the anchor point again. So you move the anchor point, and then right away, don't click anything again, hold Alt and drag out a copy. Now pay attention to the numbers that are created. So you want to make your copy about 30 degrees because 30 goes into 360 12 times, so that will give you even spacing if that's something you want, that you care about. And then I'm just doing Control D, Control D, Control D. You can eyeball it. It doesn't have to be exactly 30, and for this, you know, that's like a personal preference thing if you want to get the math right. Okay, so we have this, and we want to make this into a decorative scatter brush that we can use over and over again. So all we have to do is come into the selection tool, which is V on the keyboard, select, make sure all the petals are selected, and then I'm going back into my brushes and I'm dragging it in. And now we want this to be a scatter brush. Press OK. You can, again, change the pressure on the tablet. One thing that's fun if you don't have a tablet is to do random. And random's going to change the size, so you can have it go from really small to really big. And you can have the spacing be random, the space between each one. So this is another thing when you get into these kind of options, that it's really about, the rotation on this one doesn't matter because it's a circular thing. It's really about you experimenting and really getting comfortable with trying different things. And then we can draw an arc, a couple arcs, press V, select them all, and do the scatter. And okay, my scatters were really big, so let me make that smaller. So I can draw little small arcs. Or you can draw with the pencil. And you can see when I draw with the pencil and I'm selected on that scatter brush, it's drawing them all around. So you can go crazy with this and do it however you want. So you can either use the pencil to draw it, or you can make lines and then select it and apply the scatter brush.